When the Diddy trial opened, no one expected the courtroom to fall completely silent. But that's exactly what happened. Prosecutors didn't waste a second. Their first words, a shocking comparison. This is shades of R. Kelly. And with that, the message was clear. This wasn't just a legal battle. This was a public reckoning. The courtroom was warned in advance. This case was going to be graphic. But few expected the level of detail prosecutors unleashed right out of the gate. According to their opening statement, Diddy allegedly orchestrated something they called freakoffs, private, disturbing gatherings that went far beyond what most would consider consensual adult behavior. One of the most jaw-dropping claims, that Diddy hired male escorts and, in one instance, allegedly forced one of them to urinate on his ex-girlfriend Cassie, while Diddy watched. Prosecutors argued that both the escort and Cassie were pressured, if not outright forced, into participating. It was meant to show a pattern, not just of power and control, but of humiliation as a weapon. This wasn't a random story thrown in for shock value. Prosecutors clearly wanted to draw parallels between Diddy and R. Kelly, another once-celebrated figure now serving a decades-long sentence for similar accusations involving coercion and abuse. It was strategic, it was brutal, and it instantly reframed how the jury saw Diddy, not as a mogul, but as someone who might be hiding decades of darkness behind his fame. But that was just the beginning. The prosecution continued by painting Diddy as dangerously jealous and emotionally volatile. They described a man who couldn't stand to see Cassie, or any woman close to him, receive attention from other men. A man who used violence and manipulation to maintain control. A man who, according to the prosecution, believed he was untouchable. Then came the beating video, the one that's already been circulating on social media, showing Diddy allegedly attacking Cassie in a hallway. Prosecutors knew the defense would try to downplay it, claiming it was just a toxic lovers' fight, so they got ahead of it. They said this wasn't a moment of passion. It was part of a larger, more dangerous pattern. And as Diddy sat there silent, with his children in the courtroom and a Bible in his hands, the entire room was left wondering how much more was coming. But the defense wasn't staying quiet. They hit back quickly, and their strategy caught everyone off guard. They didn't deny the violence, they embraced it. But what they said next sent the trial in a completely unexpected direction. As the courtroom tried to process the prosecution's explosive claims, Diddy's defense team stepped up and immediately took a bold approach. Instead of denying the violence, they acknowledged it. Yes, they said there was domestic violence, but here's the twist. They claimed it went both ways. They described Diddy and Cassie's relationship as chaotic, toxic, and mutual in its destructiveness. And in a calculated move, they told the jury, if you want to call him a domestic abuser, fine, guilty as charged, but that's not what he's on trial for. This wasn't a confession, it was damage control. The defense was trying to draw a clear line between personal relationship drama and federal crimes. According to them, the government was twisting a messy love story into a criminal enterprise. And the defense made sure the jury understood that domestic violence, while serious, is a state-level issue, not a federal one. Then came the most controversial moment, the video. We've all seen it, that footage of Diddy attacking Cassie in a hotel hallway. It's hard to watch. The prosecution called it a glimpse into his private behavior. The defense, however, claimed it was being taken out of context. According to them, the fight started because Diddy suspected Cassie of cheating. It wasn't about coercion or control, they argued. It was jealousy, plain and simple. Ugly? Yes. Criminal? That's where they drew the line. But public opinion isn't so easy to manage. Social media was already exploding with outrage. Some called it gaslighting. Others saw it as a smart legal move. Either way, the defense knew they couldn't win this trial by pretending Diddy was innocent of everything. So they pivoted. They humanized him. They said he was flawed, emotional, sometimes angry, but not a monster, not a criminal mastermind. To drive that point home, Diddy's lawyers brought up what they called government overreach. They claimed prosecutors were digging into Diddy's bedroom life, trying to turn his private sexual preferences into criminal behavior. One of his lead attorneys said, "The government has no business being in his bedroom. None." But the prosecution wasn't done. They had more. Much more. And it wasn't just about Cassie. Their next witness would deliver testimony that could destroy the defense's argument that this was all consensual. Because this time, it wasn't about jealousy or lovers' quarrels. It was about drugs, coercion, and control. And the woman who stepped forward, hidden behind the name Jane Doe, would describe something far more disturbing than anyone expected. Just when the courtroom seemed to catch its breath, prosecutors introduced a new voice, one they promised would shift everything: Jane Doe. Her identity remained hidden, but her story cut through the silence like a knife. She wasn't just another name on a witness list. She was someone who claimed to have lived through the darkest side of Diddy's private world and survived it. According to Jane Doe, she was once romantically involved with Diddy. But what began as a glamorous relationship quickly spiraled into something far more sinister. She described parties that blurred into freakoffs, where drugs were expected, condoms were forbidden, and personal boundaries didn't exist. She claimed that while she appeared to consent, she was never truly willing. The only way she could get through the experiences, she said, was by numbing herself with substances she never would have touched otherwise. It was a brutal admission. Jane Doe told the jury that she was instructed not to speak up, that saying no wasn't an option, that even the smallest defiance led to emotional manipulation and threats of being cut off, not just financially, but from the entire inner circle that Diddy controlled. He didn't just manage artists. According to her, he managed people, emotionally, psychologically, and physically. One of the most disturbing parts, her claim that Diddy forbid the use of protection during group encounters, even when she begged for it. The prosecution framed this as the ultimate power move, control not just over someone's body, but over their safety and choices. And it wasn't just about her. Prosecutors hinted that several other women were ready to back up Jane Doe's version of events. If they testified, this wouldn't be seen as one woman's word against a superstar's. It would be a pattern, one that could shake the foundation of Diddy's defense. The emotional weight in the courtroom was undeniable. The jury watched closely. Some leaned forward, others glanced away. And Diddy? He didn't react. He sat expressionless, flipping through a Bible on the defense table, as if already preparing for the next wave. But here's where it got legally dangerous for him. Because while the defense could argue that Jane Doe's story was subjective, that it was her interpretation of a strange but consensual lifestyle, the prosecution had something else in their back pocket. A charge that didn't require proving threats or coercion. A charge that stood on its own: interstate transportation of a sex worker. No need to prove pressure, no need to prove fear, just movement across state lines. And according to the prosecution, they had enough to make that stick. Because if even one person confirms that Diddy arranged out-of-state travel for paid escorts, everything changes. And that's where the government may finally land the knockout blow. By now, the courtroom wasn't just hearing a story. It was watching a reputation collapse in real time. Diddy, once untouchable, was facing 3 separate federal charges, and each one carried the weight to change everything. But it's the last charge, the simplest on paper, that could be the most devastating. Let's break them down. Charge 1, racketeering. The prosecution claims Diddy ran his entire empire like a criminal organization, with himself at the center. This isn't your usual mob boss case. It's rare to see a single person targeted under racketeering laws. But prosecutors argue that Diddy used his resources, influence, and connections to create an environment where exploitation was systematic. Still, proving that kind of organization without multiple people charged alongside him won't be easy. Charge 2, interstate transport under coercion. This one requires the prosecution to show force, fraud, or threats. And it's where Jane Doe's testimony becomes critical. Her words, combined with accounts of other women, could establish the pattern of psychological and emotional pressure. But the defense is betting the jury won't see it that way, that they'll interpret these encounters as reckless, maybe even immoral, but ultimately consensual. But charge 3? That's the wild card. Interstate transport of a sex worker doesn't require proof of coercion. If even one escort confirms that Diddy arranged travel across state lines for paid sexual encounters, the government has its win, and Diddy has a serious legal problem. Reports suggest at least one man subpoenaed in the case is expected to testify he was present at one of the freakoffs. Whether he admits to being a sex worker is what could tip the scales. And then there's the jury itself. 12 people, hand-picked, each with their own biases and boundaries. 8 men, 4 women, the women, all women of color, the men evenly split, 4 white, 4 black. It's a group that may understand Diddy's cultural impact, but may also be the most skeptical of how far that influence was allowed to go unchecked. The defense, in a risky move, has already hinted at what some see as a racial undertone in the case. They argue this is a takedown, not just of a man, but of a successful Black icon. The government has no business in his bedroom, one attorney declared. This is about controlling the image of a powerful Black man, not about justice. But critics say that's deflection, that if the same actions were committed by any other man, regardless of race or fame, the outrage would be the same. And as Diddy continues to sit quietly in court, his entire legacy hangs in the balance. The trial has only just begun, but the fallout has already started. Public support is cracking. Collaborators are distancing themselves, brands are walking away. And maybe the scariest part for Diddy, this isn't just about what he's done. It's about what else might come out. Because if these are just the first witnesses, what secrets are still waiting to be revealed?